Hello and welcome to the October Microsoft licensing update from the version 1 software asset management team. How's everybody today?
Good, Carl,
Very
thanks.
well.
Great. So, couple of meaty updates this month, I think is fair to say. Um, some big announcements, and I know the plan is to push out a separate blog and probably have a more detailed deep dive on some of the changes, particularly around the rules around running licenses and outsourcers, and also some of the licensing changes to Windows Server and the positive impact, hopefully, that they may have to a lot of organizations. So on that note, I guess I'll take the first ones, right? Because as you mentioned just there now, there has been some big changes announced, and I think one of the most material ones that we saw was around Windows Server. So as we know from for years now, the Windows Server has historically been licensed on a core basis, and it's being linked to the physical underlying number of cores on a piece of hardware. Just this week, or just this month, I should say, Microsoft made a key change where they're shifting the dynamics in terms of how you license Windows Server. And now there's an opportunity to license Windows Server Standard Edition on a virtual machine basis. So what does that mean? It means that you can license individual virtual machines. You've got to have a minimum of 8 cores per VM and 16 licenses per customer. But really, what's interesting around this one is that you have the rights to move those licenses around your data center, moving them from ESX1 or physical host 1 to 2 as many times as you want and not be constrained by the 90-day assignment rights that you would historically have associated with Windows Server Standard. The only caveat to add to this key change is that in order to avail of it, you've got to have active software assurance, or they need to be subscription licenses. And then also another kind of underlying prerequisite that's there is that all of the CALs that might access the server also need to have been purchased through subscription licenses or have active software assurance on them as well. So quite a material one, and I'm not going to get into too much detail on it. As I said, we've got another session coming up in the next couple of days on the changes to Windows Server. But for orgs that have been historically stacking Windows Server Standard licenses to license their low density virtualized environments, this is quite a positive addition. And then also interlinked with this is this announcement around what Microsoft are calling flexible virtualization benefit. And this is where we're seeing in the terms this month an expansion of Microsoft's outsourcer software asset management rights for customers. So we've seen the introduction of a huge amount of flexibility when it comes to bringing um, licenses to third party outsourcers. Whereas historically, some of those limitations that were in place were quite prohibitive. So things like where we saw historically customers only had the right to bring licenses to an authorized outsourcer where they were running that software on dedicated hosts is now being removed, and we're now seeing this what Microsoft is terming this flexible virtualization benefit, whereby uh, a lot of key Microsoft products like Windows Server, like Microsoft 365 apps, Windows 10 and 11, amongst a whole host of other Microsoft solutions, can now be brought to these outsourcers and deployed on deployed on shared tenancy. The only caveat to add to this is that the benefit, or should I say the flexibility, doesn't apply to what we refer to as listed providers. So AWS, Google, Alibaba, obviously those key listed providers there, and obviously key competitors of Microsoft. This flexibility doesn't extend to those providers. So that's an interesting space to watch over the coming months and see their reaction from those particular vendors. But like I said, we're going to get into a little bit more detail on this specific topic, as well as the Windows Server updates, the licensing updates on a separate fireside chat in the coming days. So I don't know if anybody else had a look at the terms. Anything else interesting there? Neve, what did you see this month?
Just the one that I had a look at, and it's amazing, when you don't all the things that you don't know, but there was one in there for Windows Desktop OS, and that is that they updated the purchase eligibility for Windows 11 Home to Pro to include the geographic areas of Mexico, South America, and Central America. So I guess, look, yeah, it very simply they've extended that, and I'd imagine that's for customers under maybe MCA programs and so on. I'm not sure if it applies to enterprise agreement customers, but I could be wrong. I couldn't see anything there, but that's it from me.
Okay. Richard, William, who wants to go next?
I'll go next if you like. So it's just a very brief one again. Not Microsoft 365. They've added 3 components really to the what they call the availability table. So what's included under a Microsoft 365 subscription agreement, depending on which SKU. But these 3 are SharePoint Advanced Management, usually an on-prem type functionality, but that's been now made available in the cloud through Microsoft 365. Workload identities, which comes under the Microsoft Entra sort of whole protection sort of identity management piece. So that's a new offering within that. And Viva Sales, which is the sort of Teams-based sort of operational and key objective type solution, which Microsoft is rolling out to basically create employee inclusion and KPI type based skill sets that you can measure using Viva. And the final thing that within that update is Microsoft 365 Professional Direct Support has been added to the Microsoft Customer Agreement Availability Table, which means that customers can purchase sort of SLA-based support directly from Microsoft or through their provider or through an enterprise agreement for the Microsoft 365 stack, which they couldn't do before. That's that.
Great stuff. Richard?
Yeah, so I actually looked at 2 things in this month's updates, and I'll jump through maybe 2 of them pretty quickly, and then there's one that probably stands out for me. So the first one I would like to talk about is the Microsoft Intune. They basically removed Intune for EDU from the Microsoft customer agreement. As you're probably aware, Microsoft Intune for education is basically a cloud-based mobile device management service for schools. Now they've removed this for Intune for EDU for devices only, it seems, from the MCA. So that's the first one. I'll be interested to know how that affects licensing within that environment. The user aspect is still okay, it's untouched, but the devices piece has been removed. The other one is the Microsoft Azure update. The first part of it is actually quite simple. They updated the API terms to remove abbreviations and add clarity to which APIs apply. Simplified, increased definitions, and made things a bit clearer. The other bit of this update that is quite interesting to me is where they updated the Azure communication services interoperability and messaging requirements. So basically, ACS interoperability with Teams allows application developers to build applications and experiences that interact with Microsoft Teams users over voice, video, chat, and screen sharing. So you will probably see the use cases of this when you're having meetings between people outside outside the organization. Um, so maybe let's say an hospital calling a patient, things like that. You will also see use cases in contact centers and also between teams and specialist devices, especially with augmented reality headsets. So this change actually has a far-reaching requirement, and basically what they've done is they've just updated what is available, what you're able to use. Requires a bit more digging, but the reach of this is a bit more than just the footnote that they've put in there.
That's interesting.
Interesting. There was one other update that actually just came in this morning. I don't know if everyone has had a chance to have a look at this one, but this was with regards to the Azure Hybrid Benefit. So Microsoft have just extended the Azure Hybrid Benefit to include or give away Azure Kubernetes or AKS on Windows Server and Azure Stack HCI. So, that could be a really interesting proposition for customers who are looking to potentially reduce costs on that front. So apart from that, that's all we're going to go through this month's product terms updates. Do watch out for that separate session that we're going to run on the whole outsourcer space and the licensing impact of the changes that Microsoft announced during the week, as well as the licensing changes, a little bit more deep dive on Windows Server and how that can impact your organization and where there may be cost saving opportunities coming out from that key announcement during the week as well. So until next month's licensing update, we'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.